I'm a prosecutor from General Prosecutor's Office, HF Court of Appeal Constanța, Police Constanța is located on the southeast border of the European Union from the seashore of București coast. I want to present you a couple of examples of case regarding environmental matters, and we have to present you a practical, effective method of how we acted in the matter of environmental protection. Of course, I would like the legislature, the government, to help us with an improvement of the legal framework in this matter. But until then, we are working with what we have at our disposal. Now, the first case is one of the biggest cases in this kind of matter regarding an involvement of a lot of Italian so-called investors and illegal business regarding waste disposal. Money more than 10 billion euro. We much proceed this case. Starting from 2010 in Romania has been noticed an inadequacy of legislative and institutional framework in the field of environmental issue management, which required the rapid adaptation of the system of law and the awareness of the judicial authorities about the importance of this phenomenon. The first dossier is so-called Europe's waste, because starting with 2004, when Romania was preparing to become a field member, a group of so-called Italian investors have legally prepared their land for placement in Năvodari, very near from Constanța, 10 kilometers, the largest toxic waste landfill ever been in Europe. Our house, they wanted to have a height from 95 meters and area of 30 hectares, capable of storing 6.5 million tons of toxic industrial waste of all categories. They planning to do this starting from 2004. In addition of the visible aspects of environmental safety, this issue has given rise to an ecological disaster of enormous proportions, whereas in Dobrogea, the county, the whole region, there is a very little known but extremely important situation. Over 50 meters below, under Dobrogea's land, it's an underground river, comparable to the Danube, with pure and unaffected water of at least 2,000, sorry, I am for many years, over 90 million cubic meters flow of non-chlorinated water without nitrates, with a complete balance of calcium, magnesium, and iron, known since the time of old historian Totul. This big river flows in the opposite direction with the Danube River. The legend said that in the Tomis area, Jason and the Argonauts would have rested after they had stolen the gold wool from Caucasus. It's the largest reservoir of drinking water in Romania and perhaps the most important in Europe, considered by specialists to be the fourth arm of the Danube. Look, this is the city of Năvodari. In this place, they wanted to put this enormous warehouse. I will explain to you immediately. The direct consequences of theoretical location of this super deposit for toxic waste would be a strong chemical pollution of these waters with extremely severe consequences. Type domino, which would have been added to an olfactory pollution and hazardous substances for the health of the ecosystem in the air, and all population will be very harm affected. The research revealed that the former mayor of Năvodari approved by falsifying the contents of official documents, authorized the placement of the landfill exactly at the entrance of the military airport tracks in Helgovijan, where a strong NATO base is located. It was documented that in order to allow the completion of the landfill, the decision makers would receive bribes worth over only the bribe in cash, €1.5 million, was the total value of the business, like I said to you, was over than €10 million. This is an exercise in our imagination. Is not a real photo, because it's not a real, because they don't succeed to do this. But look, this is the city of Năvodari, and in this way wanted to look the warehouse, look the highest level from the warehouse and from the building of citizens. Like I said, the landfill was to be built close to the NATO airport in Helgovijan, reasons from which the Civil Aviation Authority did not agree with this. But that doesn't matter for them, because, look, this is the NATO basis there, and make an imagination and an exercise. The planes who wanted to land it, they have a big problem, because you can land it garbage mountain, and after that to immediately to put the plane on the road. And the anticipated moment for the start of the business would have been after the garbage at the European level became intra-community goods. And theoretically, it would have consisted of a good exported from Italy to Romania, from southern Italy to the port of Năvodari by the sea. But here, the Italian society from this had a lot of contracts with another companies from Austria, Switzerland, Germany, to export the garbage there, and from there they wanted to export and to put in my home. Also, here the landfill should have been positioned at the middle of Romania's sea coast, being visible from Sulina to Vama Veche, the southwest border, because it was considered to be very high. And I really think in this manner they prepared for a very big disaster. Not only ecological disaster, economical disaster, tourists, from everything. Using those falsified documents referred to this group of investors, they sued Romania of a human rights court from Strasbourg, which condemned the Romanian state for not respecting the principle of legal circuit security. Respectively, by the final unauthorization of the construction of the landfill, the fact itself generating additional stress in the criminal investigation. Because it was very difficult for me, like a prosecutor, to manage this type of cases when also the European Court said they convicted Romania. And in the regulation of human court, they have not procedure to modify this decision. Even they knows their decision was made with falsified documents. They can do nothing. In this time, the decision against Romania is valid, and nothing can do nothing. The person responsible for the corruption and malfeasance in office were sued, all of which were definitely convicted by the High Court of Cassation and Justice from Romania, and the related documents, all of them was annulled. Although the legal framing of detained deeds was in the criminal field of corruption and abuse of power, and not the environment, but I presented the case to point out that the measures taken by the criminal investigation bodies prevented the occurrence of an ecological disaster which would have unimaginable consequences. The population of Năvodari was revolted to find out of the danger, but they made a lot of public protest. I don't know why sorry, it's my fault. This is Năvodar city, the Năvodar beach, and in this referendum, 99.7 bodies from Năvodar voted against this deal. The rest, from 0.3, was the employees of Italian investors. This very big river is flowing under the ground until here. This is the Black Sea, but the water is not so salty. It's more than sweet water because of this river. Images from town of Năvodar, and when the people of Năvodar protested against this type of very good business, but only for them, I called for support of the population of Năvodar, and also from the priests from Năvodar, who managed with their believers all this movement to stop against the Human Rights Court decision the building of this warehouse, because it will be a very, very big disaster. And this is a kid who was very happy with this intention. The second file is a dossier from household waste, but fuel from cement factory, where is the subjects from chlorine was spoken early. As a process to adapting Romania environmental protection obligation was quite slow. People with business from Napoli area, Italy, found another link in the legal system used to effectively clean up by Southeast Italy's waste. The first case, because I want to present two cases in this matter, because are two different types of cases. Generally named Orgova 219 was provided by the situation whereby a contract was concluded under which from 200 ships loaded with household waste were due to deliver in official documents. This being called refused delivered fuel, and which had to be burned in the ovens of the cement factory. Due to the obsolete technology, these are not equipped with coolers for the smoke, which was to be emitted into the atmosphere, which would generate the combination of substances from the content and the multiplication by more than 300 of the dioxin and furans contents, which would have consequences of human health, and not only, extremely serious, of course. But those have been checked since the first shipment. It was our luck, with the help of Environmental Guard, the Coast Guard, Maritime Police Service, and the Public Health Department, under directly my surveillance like prosecutor in this matter in my country. A situation where businessmen have given up this process. This was the first shipment with garbage. They wanted to be the fuel for making cements in the factory. Now, it's very difficult to do cement from, I know, pampers or this kind of waste. In this matter, when we put them back this first vessel, the same investors found another way, a new way, a new niche, namely road transport of household waste wells, which aim to be borne in the same types of waste from the cement plants. The transports being obviously much smaller quantities, comparing with the vessel, then the naval one having the chance to remain undetected. Italian company Delta Energy, through the statutory administrator Italian Student Saporito Massimo, was found after exporting Ghișcă Dagabilici, Conedare, a shipment of medical and household waste that was part of similar chain of hundreds of such transport for crushing and burning in the furnace of 7 plants. The judiciary body have been notified. They have flagged their activity. The criminal activity has been documented, and the judge is now properly referred to a case related to illegal import-export of waste. You know, look, in their opinion, this is the fuel, medical waste. It was only an example, but it was a very big. In the front of the judge, their defense is some political revenge of Romanian authorities because we are a very good citizen, very good businessmen, and this is the fuel. I suggested them to burn this fuel in their mother's ovens. Another dossier is of illegal export of non-hazardous waste. The judicial bodies have become aware of the fact that the company despre, based in Bucharest, and the work going in Myanmar, exported waste, especially from China, South Korea, and Asian Sea, also in Malaysia. Although in official documents, they appeared as metallurgical byproducts, copper concentrate, zinc, silver, and in the last time, gold concentrate. Anything you want. The society representatives used the samples of compliant material, which they need to analyze, and the result of the bulletins were used by a customs authority, mentioning that there might be a difference between export goods and the recorded in the analysis bulletins. In real facts, they put this garbage from these fields to export, and also ask ourselves the interest of this kind of business. What is? I will explain to you. About water products were exported in this manner. That is about 2,000 tons of cargo exports, for which approximately $9 million American dollars was collected in this kind of exports. The autos collected the waste from the tailing dams, like I said, of a bankrupt company, namely România Mare, or simply from various virgin sites used as ad hoc waste dumps. The Chinese authorities proceeded to return the waste, not the money, only the waste. The proceedings being currently underway before the judge, in which the authors were sued for illegal export of waste, tax evasion, money laundering, and use of false documents in the customs office. Because we asked how it's possible to happen something like this. When we made the search warrants with the colleagues from National Environmental Guard, this photo is also in the room. We were there. These businessmen were very highly supported by chief in charge from police of this country who was involved in this business. The fourth dossier, it's illegal exports of dangerous waste this time. It's another type of waste. National Guard reported to us, like prosecutor, we have a very good work together. We're a very strong team, I think. Stock Resources Hunedoara did the waste to countries outside the European Union, justifying a set of unrealistic documentation, indicating that the export goods would be in fact or lead concentrate, being presented to be loaded and transported to China, 57 containers, with an offer from 300 tons of cargo. Research has shown that the authors used nothing but an unauthorized means of transport, and when cargo was deposited in Constanța harbor, it was found that the containers from the ship loading procedure were reaching a form of, I don't know, like something in the sea that could run into the sea and pollute the aquatic environment, because it was very dangerous liquid. In the course of investigation, it was demonstrated that the exporting company did not have any authorization for this activity, that it had no human technological resource or operating space to produce the exported goods. In fact, it was composed of elements from the tailing dams, the Hunedoara metallurgical plants, parts of automobile batteries, and other waste of this type. Technological analysis revealed a high degree of toxicity in the matter, which was taken from the storage site and properly transported to a specialized company near Constanța to be solved this problem, to be neutralized. This investigation was possible to make by the prosecutor because I was supported by the police, like always from the National and the Tribunal, and the other public servants. And find the last dossier, which I want to present you. It's a little bit funny, but not so funny, like you will see. The pollution with matter from a big breeding plant. I think you know the Danube. It's a very big river, and this was happened a list of 50 kilometers per Danube delta. This kind of problem. National Guard carried out measurements in the county of Măcini, near my county, occasion which they found the Danube waters contain organic components, such as feces suspected to coming from the pig breeding plant located in Brăila County. This complex had about 100 pigs, and their manner their manner were systematically discharged directly into the Danube River through an underground pipeline, and without the wastewater treatment procedure. The spill was made in a location about 3 kilometers upstream. That means before the water flow from the river into the drinking water supply in Brăila city, creating an imminent and obvious risk to the health of population. On occasion of the researches authorized by the judge, two artisanal installations carried out by a representative of this complex were identified with the purpose of discharging unspent sewage directly into the Danube. On the other hand, in order to create an appearance of legality, sampling wastewater to control body, because we must know to make in real technological matter this purifying the sewage, you must have a first installation. I'll go again. The first installation consisted of a bypass carried out inside the sewage treatment plant between the manure collection basin and the evacuation line in the Danube, through which untreated wastewater could be discharged directly into the emissary by avoiding passage through purification access. Technologically, this I want to see. The process had to include 3 stages, namely mechanical purification, where the liquid components is separated from the solid parts of the manure, this stage being respected by the authors. Chemical treatment, requiring treatment of the liquid components for neutralization of toxic substances. And biological purification, in which the liquid components that should have been previously neutralized had to be treated bacteriologically, and the results could be spilled into the Danube. Very legal. The second artisanal plant was constructed ingeniously through the wastewater treatment line of the biological reactor. thus the artisanal installation continued through the ground up to the building, where to the chemical treatment tanks were located, where it was connected to a barrel supplied with the clean water when needed. This is the underground pipeline we succeeded to discover. The house warrant house search. So when the control bodies intended to take samples of the waste, water treated to the end of full process, the clean water was pumped through the second artisanal plant, and the result of the purification procedure is how you imagine. The purpose of illegally exploiting of the second handicraft facility was to hide the wastewater treatment plant from avoiding cost by purchasing the chemical and biological components necessary from the proper treatment. The consequence of this harmful transfer of biological waste between the generator and the river was the very systematic pollution of waters, which value exceeding 2,000 more times the maximum needs admitted in the certain criteria. In order to demonstrate the systematic nature of this pollution activity, the quantities of chemical and biological reagents necessary from the inertization of the manure produced by this large amount of pigs, now 40,000 pigs per day, were compared with those actually purchased by traders, resulting in not supplying more than 1% from necessary, which means that the purification procedure was obviously non-existent. The trader was sent to the court, the case being currently before the judge, charged with persecution of water pollution offenses, execution without rights of aquatic facilities, commercial operation without a water management permit, and the continuation of the operation after the suspension of the activity ordered by national guard. And the final, I want to present kind of conclusion, because the criminal justice bodies in Romania have become, in the last years, very conscious about and have constantly shown their concern of their line of competence to combat the criminal phenomenon that affects the safety, the environment, and believe me, we are working, hard working to do the best we can to stop this phenomenon in our possibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much for showing these interesting cases. It also shows how much environmental and health damage we have because of these criminal cases. So thank you very much for sharing with us. Because of the time, one question, if somebody has a question. The speaker, this is Cloud Pepper. I hope you pronounce your name well. He's in NATO, working for the NATO Support and Procurement Agency. And he will give a presentation of the shipment of military waste, explosive military waste.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start the presentation itself, I would like to drop a couple of messages. One is a heartfelt thanks to IMPEL and most notably Mr. Juncker, who made this visit possible and give us the opportunity to talk up about a tiny little activity but still very important, well, at least in my view. Secondly, and someone in the audience was asking yesterday, well, do you find this really interesting because you're not in, say, a subject matter expert? I said, I find it hugely interesting. And I think that by notably going through these cases, I noticed that there is something to be afraid of. That's correct. And say the presentation today shall do the opposite. it shall provide you with a kind of a comfort to make you aware that this is something which is in good hands. Okay, so let's go through the table of contents. What is the situation, past and present? I put myself an objective to this presentation, of course. Then a very important part is, who are we? What are we doing and why are we doing it? Then slowly into more details regarding what we call the Ammunition Support Partnership, but I come back to this later on. Then, well, the thematic was, of course, the transfer of military origin waste. This is in very particularly the industrial demilitarization of ammunition, what I'm talking about. So it is about general information. Then I will immediately dive into the heart of the problem, which I think is terminology, the definitions, which are absent. Then I jump back to what we do and how we do it. I mean, it's the project cycle of such an event. I will then go over to the industrial facility, say who is it with which we are cooperating, the processes in themselves. I give a summary, some say recommendations or wishes, if you like, soon Christmas, and of course my own point of contact. I would like to say that I would stay until tomorrow, so if there is a need or a wish to talk to me, I'm available all of afternoon, and anyway, I mean, the most questions come later on, so of course, please feel free to contact me via email. And we have a time restriction, haven't we? We have a time restriction.
Yeah, yes.
I tried to rush a bit, but not too much. See, since 1994, NAMSTA, or nowadays NSPA, the NATO Support and Procurement Agency, has awarded more than 200 contracts for ammunition demilitarization on behalf of its member nations. We apply certain European directives regarding transportation of ammunition, dangerous goods, environment, occupational health and safety. And we are using nowadays 3 ISO standards imposed onto the contractors, and we'll come back to this later on. So what happened? On 14 April 2019, this year, the Bavarian police stopped the truck from country X to country Y. And the Bavarian policeman, he decided that this is a transfer of waste, so this is an illegal shipment of goods. So on the one hand, there was information passed on to all stakeholders along the line of countries, and of course on our side we immediately suspended any contractual work on this particular contract. And now we're sitting here saying there is a kind of a challenge, because we were sure of ourselves that we did the right thing. Now this system is challenged, which showed its effectiveness for more than 20 years without any incident, without any accident so far, be it on the road or in the facilities. And the problem I believe identified is, say, the characterization of those goods. What is it? And now we're waiting for a sustainable, coherent, and most of all, a safe solution. So the objective would be to demonstrate that the correct and effective management of the ammunition demilitarization project, the effectiveness of the controls in place by our own housemate, or not housemate, say, the regulations which are blessed by all NATO nations, the application of UN, EU, national and regional law on many platforms, and most of all, which of course our nations expect from us, is it is ammunition, so it is quite sensible that we have a 100% traceability of the material until it's decomposed in its end items. And last but not least, there's also a plea in favor of expressis verbis application the exclusion of the ammunition to be demobilized from the perimeter of the European Directive on Aggregation of Waste, and the applicability of the waste legislation as of the moment where the certificate of demilitarization will have been established and signed. This now sounds Chinese, I do agree. But as we walk through the presentation, you will know that at the end, this is what he meant, hopefully. So who are we? We are a NATO organization which is steered by the North Atlantic Council and in fine by the NSPO, Agency Supervisory Board, which is made up of any NATO nation, every NATO nation. What is very important is to note that our agency shares the legal personality of NATO, and we always acting on behalf of our member nations. So we are not a commercial company. We have no loss, no benefit. We do contracts on behalf of nations. They do us what we shall do. If the regulations are there, of course, it is the nations who wrote these regulations, and we just apply them. We are funded by nations, so we have the principle of no loss, no benefit. Everything what we do, not only virtually, but literally everything we do must be funded by a nation. So the eternal question, or the ever-recurring question is, who pays for this? We, of course, then, because there is no benefit, we are a non-lucrative organization, and we are an extension of the national supply chains, and we are not a competitor to anyone else around. Diving then deeper, the agency is made up of mostly partnerships for a variety of different services. And one of which is the Ammunition Support Partnership, made up of 24 NATO nations, voluntary basis, and 2 non-NATO nations. And this partnership is a legal entity on itself, so they decide on the statutes, on how they work, how they want us to work with them. As a result, the ammunition section, of which I have the privilege to be the head of it, we are ISO 9001 and 14001 certified for the scope of our projects. And we do inclusive project management because each and every one of the team is certified as a Prince 2 practitioner. The team is composed of 7 members, and all are or have been professionals in the technical and safety domains of ammunition and explosives, be it in the armed forces of a NATO nation or in another organization. We do specific follow-on training all along the career. So as they came in, we choose staff because of their competencies and experience. And we know what we need, so we try to sustain this knowledge and also push this knowledge any further. So we do also ammunition demilitarization. So nations come to us and say, I have a certain amount of ammunition which is obsolete for some reason. We would like you to put this onto the market. So and as a result, as I said before, we awarded more than 200 contracts for the requiring entities, which I will not call them all of them, but you see the list here, into specific contractor countries. Now, who is choosing these contractors? It is not the agency. The countries, again, they will say, I have a company X, which is working in the field of demilitarization of ammunition, and I would like to put this, as we call the source file. For the moment, there are listed some 45 different companies within the NATO nations, which the countries have chosen to be, that they are able to do demilitarization, and that they possess the licenses. But that's a cycle, we'll come back later on to that. So we do not choose them. We just have a reservoir of contractors. When we do a request for proposals, that we address this request for proposal to all of these countries. That's our obligation, the international competitive bidding. Now, what kind of emission types did and did we process? I don't want to name it. I would just like to highlight one. Where is it? This one. There was one occurrence where say a major country, region-aid country, came to us saying we have this ammunition with depleted uranium, which of course is a challenge, not only because it's ammunition in itself, with a propelling charge, with other active elements, but also with depleted uranium. So what we did in consultation with the national authorities in which this ammunition was stored and to which they also belong, we drew up a plan on how to manage the waste stream. And with good result, because on the one hand, the pyrotechnic, also the energetic components, were disposed of in the standard way as we want the companies to do that. And on the other hand, the National Nuclear Agency said, this is, say the nuclear material has to be processed as this, so it was a kind of a close cooperation. However, with the result, unfortunately, that the former producer, who does not exist anymore, and the follow-on companies, they fought the decision by the court that they would have to accept the material. The depleted uranium bars, they are still in the storage in that particular country, special storage, of course. So now it comes. Let's go down to it, even deeper. Definition of ammunition. In this context, the regulation 1013 says, shipments of waste referred in point 1b2, blah, 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 directive so-and-so, where such shipments are already covered by other community legislation containing similar provisions. Whereas then the directive says that, one, it doesn't give any specific definition, but it expressively excludes by Article 2, sub 1, decommissioned explosives. What is decommissioned explosives? So let's go further. So I went back to the UN globally harmonized system of classification of labeling of chemicals, where I find that there are explosive substances and explosive articles. And again, without being very express on that, but implicitly, you see the line here, an explosive article is an article containing one or more explosive substances or mixtures. So at least, in my humble opinion, this is meant implicitly ammunition. And the Basel Convention says an explosive substance, etc., leaving out now the explosive article. So it's not, it's going towards, but it's not really expressively mentioned. So this is then the extract of the GHS, which I'll leave up to read. And the Basel Convention is this one, the Annex 3. So as a summary, we have then the GHS, the Basel Convention, the Regulation 1013 and the Directive 2008/98, which are turning around the pile like a fly, but it doesn't land on the pile. Oh, this is not very good. Okay, so, but anyway, now we come to the project lifecycle. So how does it work? And to show and demonstrate to you that this is something that we really control, is on the left, there is the start. So the country comes to us, says, we have ammunition to be demilitarized, please do an international public bidding. The controls in place that we have our own regulations, of course, on how we do this. We are driven by ISO 9001 and 14001, so as a result, there is statement of work with, amongst others, also environmental considerations, beside occupational health and safety, etc., etc. Then the freight forwarder. The freight forwarder cannot move anything or cannot be nominated to do that without having a valid ADR licenses for the trucks, for the trailers, for the drivers. The transport itself is done according to GHS 2017, of course, ADR, and also then Directive 2008/68/CE. It arrives at the contractor site, who himself has to be, that's at least what we want from the contractor, or even to be considered for evaluation for a technical bid, is ISO 9001, 14001, and more recently 45001, which we've used previously, the OSHA's 18001. And of course, we would like, although it was nominated by national authorities already, we would like to see a valid copy of all kinds of licenses and permits. But now it starts, welcome to Europe, that in spite of having a more or less harmonized environmental legislation on the European level, still many countries do their own, say, what kind of license do you need? So for instance, in one of the southern countries, let's say, well, we do not have an environmental license, but we have a license to incineration. Whereas another one, more located northerly, it's strict. For each and every industrial operation, there is a license or there is a permit. But most of all, the contract or the bidder, before having a contract, they must provide us with a draft quality plan. A draft quality plan which contains the essential elements on how we will do the job with which resources, in which time span, and with which controls he may make sure that the material will be completely demilitarized and he has a complete control of the waste streams. This quality plan is then sent to us if there is a contract 60 days after contract award. This quality plan has to be approved previously by what is called the Government Quality Assurance Representative. This is an organization, a government organization which is checking military production or service sites on, say, they check the processes, they check the results, etc. So the Government Quality Assurance Representative, he signs off or not the quality plan, and we then, finally, we are approving the quality plan. So the demilitarization happens according to this approved quality plan. Whenever there is a change to the quality plan, the contractor cannot do whatever he likes. No, he has to first request an engineering change proposal with the Government Quality Assurance Representative, who will then justify yes or no, comes to us, is seen approved or not approved. Because most of the time, if the material is discrepant, means it does not correspond to the description that it was provided during the bidding process. Normally this means more cost, so we have to go back to the nations and ask them, say, we need more money for that. Of course, the Government Quality Assurance Representative is not the only, and I would hope, and for one country I'm sure it will happen because I had numerous meetings with them, that there is more instances coming to this company to verify whatever they do, be it from occupational health and safety perspective, environmental perspective, and that everything is in order. We are doing monitoring visits. Audits, we do not have the capacity, although I pushed really hard, and there is some resistance, because everything has a cost, as I said. And something we are, say, very much pushy on is reporting and traceability. So each and every month, the contract has to send us a monthly performance report in which he describes what he has done, what he's, say, preparing to do the month later. He will show figures on what did he do and compare that to the past performance. Will he be in time, blah, blah, blah. So there are lots of mechanisms to make sure that nothing shall go wrong. And last but not least, I think this is the cherry on the cake. I mean, most of the demilitarization quality plans, they include incineration of energetic materials, means explosives, pyrotechnics, propelling charges, etc. And we will make sure that the incineration is done according to the European Directive 2010/75. And in order to be sure that this is true, then for the bidding process, for instance, we request an emission report which is not older than 1 year prior to the date of request for proposal publication, to be sure that there is a national authority or a regional authority which has taken a sample or samples in the direct incineration plant, and that the emissions are according to the named directive. So, and you will see here at the end of the process there is the end, and then the residues is waste, and they are then processed according to directive and regulation, which is expressed in the statement of work by the fact that until here, the property, the material belongs still to the nation with which we have the proceeding. Because it's only at that particular moment that the nation can write off the material from their own national records. However, the responsibility started here. So the property is still with the nation, but the responsibility is with the contractor as of the moment in time where he picks up the material in the depot. Very important to say is that the material, sorry. Okay, so the material which is shipped is unlike say what you see on the pictures. It is regularly packed ordnance which is boxed according to UN standards, etc., etc. I'm rushing. So the ADR, if we talk about environment, for instance, I mean, the ADR also includes clauses which are sure that the environmental aspects is respected twice in the opening chapter. Give a quick glimpse on the life cycle of the project. So usually it takes about 18, say 2 and 3 years from start to end. Phase 1, there are 5 phases basically where we took in the requirement, we analyze it, we do a request for proposal, we evaluate the offers, there's contract award, there is a kick-off meeting in which, say, mostly it's for, say, the nation and the contractor to agree on a transportation plan under the way forward. The quality plans and the management plan is approved. Then the operations are kicked off. There is transport, there is demilitarization, and there is reporting. Thanks for controlling me, by the way. I love this. Okay, I'm not going then to the details here. So this is on, say, the ISO 9001 is okay, but there is an AQUEB and Allied Quality Assurance publication which gives us, say, supplementary power to the customer and to the agency. In terms of, there is unlimited possibility of visiting and evaluating contractor performance, which I think is one of the most important things, and it gives us permanent access rights to the company. We do not have to ask in advance. There's a management plan where you see there is all kinds of things that we require from the contractor, and again I highlighted the environmental aspects in this. And these would be the next steps, but I'm in fight with our procurement department who wants to, say, be competitive as possible, but it's my wish or our wish to be pushing more on, say, quality improvements. You see a number of things here which we would like to imply, and say they came back and said, well, they could work with the fact that the next step is that the freight forwarder, he has to be compliant, or his trucks have to be compliant with the Euro 6 norms. That's something they agreed on. So where are the sites? You see here, see on a map and to the right, the list of the companies with which we did or have contracts between 2004 and 2019, one of which is in Romania here in Evertech. Hopefully known by yourself, okay. And the exception here is the Turkish MDF, Munitions Utilization Facility, because it's a government facility, so it's not normally included in the bidding list. Okay, let's talk about, say, what is it, how is it done? Our cube ratio in the ammunition utilization industry is normally between 90 and 91%. Why? Because the raw materials used in ammunition is of normally very high quality, so high revenue. Open burning, open destruction, which is sometimes praised as one of the solutions, is, in our terms, strictly prohibited. 10 years ago, we had a company on which they promised Yes, we do this according to the old directive on incineration, but the country itself did not, or had not ratified yet, but we said, you have to. Yes, we promised, inspection visits, they were burning in the open, closed the contract within 5 minutes, period. And they had to bear all costs related to it. For us, safety first, remote technologies preferred wherever possible. As I said, yeah, passage of title to contractor at the time when the when the ammunition has been turned into different products. So the process is removal from storage, preparation, pre-treatment, disassembly, and then finally removal of energetic materials, means all kind of explosive, pyrotechnics, etc., are cubed and waste disposal. Again, please read through. I'm available for questions anytime. So this is the process on how to evaluate a process on how to demilitarize a certain kind of ammunition. That's the piece of it. That's a hard piece. It's the, well, you all know it. It's the Industrial Emission Directive. And this is what we want from each and every contractor who practices incineration. If there is a contractor who does not have this capability, but he has a subcontractor for ammunition or say energetic incineration, we accept this. But then in this particular case, we request from the subcontractor the same amount of information, which has to be approved again in the same cycle as before. Key assumptions